The thinking on Warsmash is that making abilities on Warcraft 3 is harder than it should be. It's always been harder than it should be. They made it that making abilities as a concept was primarily only available to the original developers of Warcraft 3. So what I've been doing last weekend when I tried to make cluster rockets and this weekend when I try to make Pocket Factory is I'm trying to make the abilities in a complete rewrite of the game. And what that means is that making an ability means something different than what it would mean if you try to make the ability on Warcraft 3. And I also prefer to believe that it's easier. There's more auto-suggest, there's more open-ended functionality, and when I do things, they just work. So that is the fun of what I'm doing, is making the abilities, really making them, not faking them like what we did for 20 years on Warcraft 3. Last weekend I made a video about how to make cluster rockets. But here's an idea. Cluster rockets. What if today we continue making the Tinker and I make Pocket Factory? Now I think Pocket Factory is going to be much easier to make than cluster rockets. If you think about Pocket Factory, we could just make a new class. Excuse me. And then I can make this class extend what is it, unit or point target? I guess there ought to be just a point only target example, and I don't know if there is. Maybe I have to change my base class. So this thing, oh, there already is a point target. Okay, great. So I don't even want unit or point target. I just want point target base. Awesome. We're going to auto import that, automatically implement the methods, automatically do the code writing, automatically make the constructor. Cool. So Pocket Factory, we're going to use the order IDs dot pocket. What is it? Order IDs? Order IDs dot pocket factory. Oh, is that not a thing that exists here? Really? So I wonder. All right, I'm going to use tank drop pilot so it auto imports the order IDs type, and then I'm going to try to figure out here what is actually going on with Pocket Factory. Can we get to the bottom of this? So Pocket Factory, here's this thing. This is kind of busted. Let me unbust this. So if I close this thing and I rerun it, rather than use Blizzard's object editor, why don't I just use my own? So I'm going to use my object editor code over here. This wonderful thing is going to let me look at abilities. Particularly, I'm interested in the Pocket Factory ability because I kind of expected that it would already be there in my list of order IDs, and it kind of looks like it's not. Pocket Factory. Summon Factory. Okay, that makes sense. It's order IDs dot summon factory. There we go. So yeah, now I've got my base order ID. Populate data is pretty simple. We just read from the world editor. So I'm just going to say what I suppose we have to read a unit type, but we could just copy how to read a unit type from like summon water elemental or something. If we look at ability fields dot pocket factory, what are our, what is it, summon factory? Factory. Yeah, but there's Pocket Factory. There we go. Factory unit ID, leash range, spawn interval, summon unit ID, unit duration, unit offset. So that seems straightforward enough. Yeah. Let me start out by copying water elemental. Summon water elemental. So summon water elemental has a summon unit ID. It has a buff ID. And those are probably the things I need. I don't think there's a summon unit count on this. So let me go back to Pocket Factory. Cool. So this is going to have a summon unit ID just the same way. It's going to come from Pocket Factory. It's going to have factory unit ID. Let's see. Create that up here, which is great. And I have summon unit count, which I don't need. Buff ID, I think we're going to show as the timed life buff on the factory, so that should be pretty straightforward. Pretty much, we're gonna have we have to have do effect. So I'm gonna start this out simple, and we'll do a little more from there. So for starters, literally just simulation create projectile, and we're gonna launch from the caster. We're going to use this ability, and it already knows, in the same way you can make a unit in Warcraft 3 from an ID, in my system I can launch a projectile from an ability ID, and then what it does when it lands is entirely up to me. So it's going to launch from caster position, and it's going to be facing, oh that's a little hard, we got to get the facing. So is that caster angle 2 target, okay. The speed. Alright, I guess we gotta load the speed. So we're gonna go to our world editor ability, we're gonna get load field, ability fields, projectile speed. Cool. The level, projectile speed. Should be simple enough. We'll turn this into a variable. Create projectile. What do we got here? Sorry. Projectile speed. I don't think this needs to be homing. The concept doesn't really make sense. It's just going straight to a target point. We can put target in there, and then projectile listener. And projectile listener is pretty much the important one. That lets us define the callbacks for what to do when it lands. I don't know what this is mad about. Oh, I think it was mad because the angle 2 is not a float, maybe. Yeah, okay, that's a little bit silly. It's kind of neither here nor there. But when it lands is when we're going to create a unit. Create unit. And yeah, I guess basically, what is the difference between create unit and create unit simple? Create unit simple automatically applies to food used, and then ultimately calls create unit. Cool. So yeah, I think I want create unit simple in this case. We're going to spawn a unit. We're going to use factory. Really? This dot? Oh, okay. So we have to do pocket factory. Pocket factory dot this dot factory unit ID. Sure. Player index. So player index would be the caster unit. Player index. On the x and y would be target.getx, target.getY. Hopefully fairly straightforward. What is this upset about? Oh, there also needs to be a facing angle, which could probably just be gameplay constants, default, what is it, building angle? Building angle, which we usually think of as default building facing degrees. Cool, building angle. I'm actually not sure if building angle is degrees or radians, but I'm hoping it's just going to work. So, simple enough, this makes a unit. We probably also want to apply timed life to it. So I think that's where the unit that's returned, we're going to want to put it into a variable. We'll just call it factory unit. Alright, typo that there. Factory unit. And we're going to add buff timed life using, I guess this is where we always have to allocate a handle ID for the new buff, which is a little weird. I should probably make an API that makes me not have to do that. Maybe game.createBuff, but I'm not sure. And buff ID, I want to use that, and then we want to use the duration of that unit. That's another one. Okay, get duration, which will actually just get the duration of the current ability. So that's pretty cool. So now I can throw a missile and spawn a unit at the destination. Why don't we try it? Why don't we see if it works? I think that'll be fun. Obviously, this is not our full Pocket Factory solution, but I think it'll be fun. Actually, it turns out it probably won't work, Have you thought of why? If you're watching this video, you could try to think of why it doesn't work. Here's an interesting thought, right? What would be the reason that it won't work? Alright, here's what I think. The reason it doesn't work...
The engine's running.
Reason it doesn't work is that although I can learn cluster rockets from my last video, it says ability not yet programmed when I try to learn Pocket Factory. And that's because we got to link up Pocket Factory to the corresponding functionality that we just programmed. So that's in ability data, and I need to go to cluster rockets. We're just going to copy cluster rockets. I'm guessing it's probably ANPF, but I don't actually know. This gets back to where we want to get to our object editor. This ability, Pocket Factory, Control D. Oh, no, it's actually SY. They're probably running out of letters and wanted summon factory, and I'll bet SF was already taken. Ability, Pocket Factory. We got to import it. Okay, sure. Cool, now we'll be able to cast it. And how fun is that? Be able to, I think it'll work, throw the little thing and spawn the factory, but I might have overlooked something. We'll see. Yeah, I guess we'll find out. Cool.
Systems go.
Now I can level up Pocket Factory. Now if I cast it,
Let's roll out.
what will he do? He runs over here
I
and
can
throws it,
handle
and
that.
boom, there's our Pocket Factory.
I'm all
I would
geared
say
up.
that kind of worked really well.
I'm all geared.
Actually. So the only downside, obviously, is that this Pocket
I'm all
Factory
geared up.
is not
All systems go.
spawning anything, which maybe we would
All
want it to do.
systems go.
It also doesn't appear to have rally.
All systems go. All
I might
systems
want to give
go.
it the rally point ability. But as you can see, we have cluster
Yeah.
rockets in this time. That's kind of cool. But yeah, I guess we need to figure out the actual factory. So to actually get the factory to work, that part, we need some way to make that thing periodically spawn stuff, and then we probably are going to want to give it the rally point ability too. Let's see, C ability, factory. I'm just going to make this is factory, so this is an ability that's going to be passive. What is it? Passive spell based, probably. Alright, implement some methods on there. So presumably, the way that this usually would work for factory is we're going to have similar to Pocket Factory, which has a factory unit ID. Factory would probably have a little Clockwork Goblin unit ID, spawn unit ID, something like that. And this spawn unit ID needs to be decided by this thing, but it's not Pocket Factory. It's just factory dot spawn unit ID, and it also has a leash range and a spawn interval. Leash range equals let's see, yeah, field, ability field, factory, leash range. So that seems like that makes sense. We're going to want to create that field, and then spawn interval, field, spawn interval. Cool, so I think that makes sense. Now, the interesting thing here is that we probably also want to automatically create getters and setters so we can modify how this ability functions. So that way we can give... oh, it didn't actually make all the things I wanted. Wait, getters and setters. I guess I have to select all. Yeah, spawn ID, leash range, spawn interval. And this is going to let Pocket Factory define its own versions of those fields instead of using the populate data function in Factory. Which I think makes sense, because ultimately these same settings that we have in Factory, we also want to have in Pocket Factory when it gives the factory ability to the other guy, that's going to set its own. And so this will be like pocket factory spawn unit ID, pocket factory spawn interval, and then like pocket factory leash range. It has its own copy of all those settings, which we can set. Leash range, we'll create that. Spawn interval and create that. And so the idea is that when we create this unit, we're going to say factory unit.add new ability factory using, I guess I got to do the same thing. Handle ID allocator, create ID. And instead of using the buff ID, I'm pretty sure this just is like probably hard coded to be like, what is it, ANFA or something, you know, whatever the factory raw code is. I know somewhere in here there's like a unit ability called factory ANFY. Okay, it's not FA, it's FY. So it was just kind of hard coded to be that thing. But again, I'm not going to do this exactly like that. So like I'm giving the unit that maybe from that raw code, but we're not really using that raw code for stuff. Pretty much what we mostly want to do is we create this factory ability, and then we're going to say set leash range to my leash range, factory set spawn unit ID to my spawn unit ID. So all the settings of that are going to actually be based on the settings inside the one place inside Pocket Factory. For what it's worth, I think I also want to give this factory unit the rally ability. I don't want to allocate a handle ID for that too. I should probably make this whole handle ID allocate thing automatic. It's kind of a boilerplate code. The rest of it seems pretty straightforward, but that part's kind of dumb. Cool. So then I have factory unit. So now that I have this factory unit and it has the factory ability, we need to program what the factory ability does. The other thing I think I'm going to do is say icon showing false on this factory ability. So it's going to be a hidden icon thing that is just kind of going to be baked into the function of the Pocket Factory. Cool. So what factory actually does as a passive ability, I'm going to auto-populate this, is on tick, it's going to summon a unit. So basically every periodic tick of spawn interval, and so in order to know if we've reached the spawn interval, we probably want to have like some kind of last spawn tick, because it's going to be ticking through turns of sort of game logic, and then that's what we're going to say game get game turn tick. This is going to be like the current one, and then if the game turn tick is greater than, oh, maybe actually instead of last spawn tick, I wonder if we should have, no, that's probably fine. It's greater than the last spawn tick plus the spawn interval. Now, in order to figure out what the spawn interval is, this is where we're probably going to say, what is it, math stealing function to the time of the spawn interval divided by, from this set of constants, the time it takes for a single turn tick of the game in the parallel simulation of multiplayer. Based on that, now we can say, okay, so every so many ticks of the game logic, spawn, spawn, as the game is updating. Yeah, and then that's just where we're going to have last spawn tick equals current one. And so the main thing we have to do is game create unit. And the unit type will be this.spawn ID. The player index will be, so this unit argument to on tick is the actual factory. I mean, we could even call this the factory, basically. So that's going to be the factory's player. Whoever owns the factory will be the owner of the spawn unit. And we can pretty much just spawn it at the position of the factory, I think. And probably spawn it at that default facing again. Get constants. Building angle is probably a fine default facing angle, I would imagine. Although this spawn unit that we create, we want to put him in a variable because we want to give him a timed life as well. And the timed life that we're giving to him is again going to be some new thing with a new handle ID. Interesting point. What is the buff that this will use? I'm actually curious, does Pocket Factory define its own buff for that? And CG is the one used by Factory, but what is the one used by Pocket Factory? I have spawn unit ID. Oh, sorry, BNCG, which I assume is the same as Pocket Factory. I said ANCG, but I think I meant BNCG. Yeah, okay. So this is kind of interesting because it points out there's a buff ID at work here. And so for this buff ID, similar to Pocket Factory, we're going to just want to copy the parsing of that. I guess I should learn my own API and not have to copy it. But again, it's literally just like type definition get buff ID that reads it from the world editor data. Cool. So now there is a buff ID setting on the factory ability, which is valuable to have. Again, with generating code, we're going to generate the code for assigning the buff ID because, as it turns out, we want to get the buff ID from Pocket Factory. And maybe that's a little bit harder because basically Pocket Factory, when he's setting all the settings of his factory ability, he needs to set factory set buff ID, not to his buff ID. Like his buff ID is the factory buff ID. We can almost rename this. What is it? That's not a very clear name. Sorry, it's the factory units buff ID, and then there's also the spawn units buff ID. And so this factory unit buff ID is the default one, which points out that my function here was always getting index 0, and so I need a way to get a buff index. Cool. So this 0 should be buff index, and then everything by default would be getting index 0, which probably, just makes sense to put 0 in all these by default. But then I'm going to want to take this get buff ID function that I was using, make an additional version of the API that has int buff index, and then we're going to have to pass that to getting buff ID, and that will allow me to say that in Pocket Factory, the factory units buff ID is index 0, but the spawn units buff ID is index 1. And this will be good to have. Now we have spawn unit buff ID, and we can set that as the buff ID of the factory ability that produces the spawn units. Cool. So now that allows us to put this buff ID in the timed life buff, but it also needs a duration. So for that, I guess, get duration, which points out that who defines the duration? There should be a spawn duration. So factory as an ability has that, but Pocket Factory that gives factory to the other unit has spawn unit duration. So this is another thing we have to look up on the Pocket Factory ability. Similar to how we have spawn unit ID, spawn unit buff ID, we are going to have spawn unit duration equals world editor ability get field float ability fields Pocket Factory spawn unit duration. Looks like there's also a spawn unit offset, which I haven't really used yet, and maybe that's something else I should consider. Just passing that through. All right, well, we're going to start with spawn unit duration. In particular because we need to say factory ability set duration, which it doesn't appear to have, and so that's something else we want to fix, is that factory is getting its duration from spell base, which apparently is missing set duration. It should have been there. I guess we might as well be able to set the hero duration too, although I don't think it matters. That's just kind of the base API upgrade, but that's going to let me set the duration, spawn unit duration, which is cool. So that's mostly what you want, although I haven't figured out spawn unit offset yet. So is that ability fields factory? Does this have a spawn unit offset as well? It doesn't. So does that mean the offset is actually hiding in one of its other fields in factory? Offset. Yeah, it's probably the area of effect. That makes sense. Okay. So let's incorporate that. So basically the factory ability, it's spawning a unit, but really maybe we want to copy like Water Elemental and how that does it. Water Elemental doesn't just summon a unit. Oh, it also adds the summoned classification. I'm going to want to do that. Cool. Okay, so Water Elemental uses the area of effect to produce an offset. And I think what we want to do is the same logic. So we're going to go back to factory, and we're going to paste code from Water Elemental before spawning the unit. Basically, we figure out where the factory is, and then offset from the factory based on get area of effect of the current ability. Offset forward. And then, yeah, we pretty much use that. So actually, when I put the building default angle on here, let's not do that. Let's have it be facing the factory. Why not? That makes more sense, I think. So we get the factory, we project it forward. What that means is that the area of effect of the spawn, and we're going to put the spawn at that location. The area of effect of the factory spawner ability is the thing that I'm going to overwrite with the factory offset. There's a spawn unit duration. Sorry, I'm supposed to take level too. This dot spawn unit offset equals ability get field, ability fields, pocket factory, spawned unit offset at that level. Cool. So I create that setting. That allows me to not only set the duration of the factory ability, but actually set its area of effect to the spawned unit offset. But this also reminded us that when we create the factory unit, not only are we going to give it these abilities, we're also going to add classifications summoned to that factory, and we want to do the same thing to the spawn units when it spawns units. The spawn unit, add classification that comes out of the factory. Another thing I was kind of curious about that I don't entirely remember is if we were to pull up World Editor over here and try to pull up the actual factory unit. Interesting question. Melee special. Doesn't it have some animation it's supposed to play when it pops out little goblins? Don't you think? Nope, I made that up. If that existed, it was only in like Reforged or something. It does not appear to be doing that. Cool. Okay, well that's less work for me then. So that seems very straightforward. I think that means maybe it'll just work now. Let's try it. I might put on some headsets so I can hear the game audio while I'm recording. Pocket Factory, here we come.
What you got?
Alright, I got level 1
I can
Pocket
handle that.
Factory.
I can handle that.
Will it make goblins?
On top of it.
Yeah. Oh, it's not using the rally point. I added the rally point, but it isn't using it. We needed to actually set the, like, make them run to the rally point. Oh, okay. That shouldn't be too hard to do. Also, I think that these clockwork goblins are supposed to make a sound when they appear, which they aren't playing. We probably want to fix that.
All systems go. All systems go. All systems go. Let's roll out.
Cool.
Let's roll out.
That's a little bit interesting. There isn't a collision in
Engine's running.
this Pocket Factory. Maybe that's something I can fix.
You're terminated.
My collision system allows us to
I'm on
walk
top of
through non-building units.
The engine's running.
Because I have building
I'm on top
collision,
of it.
and I have unit-on-unit collision
I'm
for
on
moving
top of
units.
it.
But I don't have collision
all
for the
geared up.
mobile units.
I can handle that.
That's a
I'm
little bit
on
dumb.
top of it. Let's roll out. I'm on top of it. I can handle that. I'm on top of it.
Cool.
Let's roll out.
Well, I would say we have a mostly working Pocket Factory ability. Obviously, we want to fix the rally point function. And to be honest, I'm not totally sold on this offsetting that I added. I'm a little bit skeptical. It kind of seems like maybe did it actually just put the spawn unit at the position of the factory. I'm going to try that. But definitely we want to get the rally point. So that's where I want to go to. Factory, get rally point. Yeah, get rally point. All right. And then I forget if I think it might be possible that it wouldn't be set. So I'm going to say if there is a rally point that's set, then like spawn unit. But is there a way to order it to do something? What is the way to do that? Let me just do that. Okay, order. Simulation order ID target. Yeah. Okay. So why don't I just say simulation order IDs dot smart the rally point. That makes total sense. Cool. So I want to say now the rally point will work. Now this points out I don't have kaboom for the little guys to blow up. We need to add that too, but we'll get there. That might be another video. Making goblin sappers. Something like that.
What you got? I can handle that.
Alright, let's do it. Pocket
Let's
factory.
roll out.
Yeah, see, look at that. Rally point works. I guess I didn't do the sound. I'm convinced, I'm still thinking there's supposed to be a sound. When we spawn the unit, let's say game dot, what is it, sound? Unit sound effect event, coming from the factory and using this thing's ability, maybe. Okay, question. Is the sound setting, there doesn't appear to be a sound on factory. Is there a sound on Pocket Factory? No, there's not. Well, okay, so that's not going to work then. So the sound must be something like baked in the model that isn't playing or something. I don't know, I was pretty sure there was like a little bing bing when it would actually spawn the units, and I don't see that anymore. I'm not quite sure why. That's interesting. Huh. Well, I could probably have this sound thing here, and then I don't think it'll actually make any sound, but I could leave it in. Unless if it's in one of the buffs. Oh, could that be? I don't know. Can you even see buff sound effects in the editor? Well, you can. Alright, let's check factory. Pocket Factory is a buff. Doesn't... Well, okay, this is like messed up buff data. So I'm a little bit skeptical. It might actually be that it does have a sound. You know, Clockwork Goblin might, or Pocket Factory might. So the problem here is that my buff data is using Retro Model Studio to decide it, not the game. That's all inefficient. We're just going to go over here. Pocket Factory. Also, what is all this stuff? Oh yeah, okay, never mind. Pocket Factory, Clockwork Goblin. None of it has any effect sound. Okay. Yeah, I guess I don't know. Well, okay, this is not... This is looking at a different map. Alright, I guess we don't need a sound. But you know what? I think it's a good Pocket Factory ability. All we need now is the kaboom ability, which shouldn't be that hard to make. Although I suppose I could make it, actually. It probably wouldn't be that hard to make. Maybe I could do that. Why don't I do that? If I go back here and run the object editor again. Now here's the weird part. Is Tinker, or is Kaboom a Tinker ability? Or do we think that, should it actually be like a Goblin Sapper ability? Instead of the Tinker, I'll put it in a Sappers folder here for now. ability kaboom. And I'm figuring that all this does. What is this? This is a unit or point target spell. Has all the methods. And order IDs dot kaboom. All right. Cool. Okay. Order IDs self-destruct. That makes sense. I'm actually a little skeptical of this because there is an autocast function that's going to take me too long to set up. I think it's outside the scope of what I can do in a video, so I probably won't do the autocast function. We'll come back to that, but let's see what I can get with kaboom, explodes on death, and building damage factor. Those are both pretty useful, but it points out there's something else using the same IDs. SDS1. So we need to find SDS2. Perhaps they failed to load. Alright. Surely there's a damage amount. It's just failing to load. Yeah. What is the damage amount? This doesn't want to tell me the key that I'm looking for. This is on the wrong map. Alright, well maybe I'll jump over here and look at this thing. So if I look at the metadata, SDS1, what's its deal? SDS1, yeah. So something else is on ASDS. Ah, DDA1. Okay, so we gotta find DDA1 for some reason. Who knows exactly why, but we're getting there. DDA1. AoE damage upon death sapper. Okay, so apparently AoE damage upon death sapper shares statistical values with the kaboom. I didn't know that. Alright. Damage upon death sapper. Cool. So, partial damage, full damage. Yeah, we just gotta get the full damage amount, full damage radius. Let's see. And then probably convert these to class fields, copy them, make the partial version of the same thing, which makes sense. Cool. Let's see. Now, it did seem like there was also this boolean for kaboom that says, does it explode on death? I don't know if I'm gonna set that up yet, but I guess maybe I could. And there is also the kaboom building damage factor. Sorry, I put factory. It's kind of funny. Building damage factor. Great. So now we have the data populated. So when we use kaboom, I think this one's pretty straightforward. Simulation. Use world collision. Get units in range of the caster. Using the area of effect of this ability. Well, so I guess there's an interesting idea. Does this ability have area of effect, or does it only use full damage and partial damage? It has 0 area of effect. It only uses full and partial damage radius. Okay. Yeah, so I guess what I could probably do is partial damage radius and full damage radius. Pick the bigger one. We'll just call this radius. So like if you for some reason only use full damage, I'll try to honor that. I don't know if that's how the actual thing is supposed to work, but that's what I'm going to do. And then this, we're going to have an enum unit. Callback. It's going to return false. It's going to affect every unit. And so basically if enum unit can be targeted by our caster of the ability using his targets allowed on that enum unit with its targets allowed field, then it's going to do some damage. Enum unit damage from the caster. What else do we need? Attack type spell, damage type demolition, I imagine, which is probably the self-destruct damage type. Weapon type, I like to just use, what is it, weapon type Jas, who knows? It's kind of this useful constant. Great, and then damage. So I guess this is where I need to have damage amount equals something. So basically, if the caster of the ability can reach to the enum unit using full damage radius, then the damage amount will be the full damage amount. Otherwise, damage amount will be partial half damage amount, because it's like a wider area. And then, again, also, if this unit is a building, then damage amount will be multiplied by building damage factor. Cool. And it will do damage amount damage. I think that sounds good, actually. This was easier than I thought it would be to make kaboom. Although, to be fair, it's not auto-cast. I'm actually not entirely sure. Yeah, so at a fundamental level, these default abilities are non-smart, so not on right-click activating, and probably not auto-cast, although I kind of forget. Do they have the auto-cast functions? So it's using a default thing that's overgeneralized, and it's just a clickable icon. So we probably are going to have to fix that to make it actually auto-cast. But for now, I didn't do that. Not even sure if I can do that. The generic single icon ability in the old system did have an auto-cast on and off order ID. Who decides that? I do. Alright, so maybe we can have it auto-cast, but what does it mean for it to auto-cast and to give it that functionality that sort of right-clicking will take over? We're going to want to override the no smart ability, which basically makes it that check can smart target is going to switch to just using the normal check targeting for units, I imagine. I think for points, we still want right-click to be move. Maybe I can do this. Maybe there is a system. Alright. Kaboom. So I go back to Kaboom, where I have get base order ID. We're going to just say auto-cast on order ID. Maybe this is a lot easier than I thought. Order ID is self-destruct on. Get auto-cast off order ID. Order ID is self-destruct off. So if that's true, and we already have those functions, now I'm curious, then does that mean that we have a default function is autocast on, which already exists? That's cool. So I can go back to Kaboom and say check can smart a target, and specifically I want to get the one, if I can see, yeah, widget target. Okay, so my thought process is if autocast is on, we're going to do something special. We're going to say, okay, if you have the autocasting on, I want my right click, instead of an attack, I want my right click to be an explode. So what that is going to mean is we're going to check, what is it, inner check can target, probably on that same target as if it were not autocasted order ID. So let's see, unit. Instead of that order ID, we're going to use get base order ID, target, and receiver. So hopefully that will just sort of enable us to do that if autocast is on. I'm kind of skeptical whether that's going to work or not, but we'll find out. Over here, where we have the Tinker, this is out of order because, of course, the kaboom of the Goblin Sapper was supposed to be made first, but whatever, ASDS, let's do it, ASDS. This is going to be C ability kaboom, and maybe, just maybe, this ability will be given to little robo-goblins. Sorry, I shouldn't call them robo-goblins, I should call them clockwork goblins. Cool, alright. Will this work? Probably not. No idea. Alright, Pocket Factory. Let's just get a level 3. Big, long-lasting goblins. And I'm going to tell them to run up here. Oh, that's interesting. It's telling them to queue up this object that shouldn't be clickable. And then they don't run to it. Well, alright. So, supposing that I go up onto this platform, there's this trigger that does this. Now, can I kaboom to deal them damage? Not totally sold that this is actually doing damage. Plus, I think there's too many of those things. I need to go along.
Let's roll out. All
Wait, are they like invincible now?
The engine's running.
That's interesting.
I'm on top of it. Hey-ya! I can handle that. Let's roll out. I'm on top of it.
Why did I not do them damage?
I'm on top of it.
That time it did.
I'm on top of it. Yeah. All systems go.
Huh. So somehow this ability is not successfully exploding.
I'm all geared up.
They think they can cast it, but they don't. Very not effective.
What you got?
And the autocast
All
doesn't seem to
systems
be
go.
actually enabling.
I'm all geared up.
Not quite sure why. You know, you could hear it, you could think that it would autocast, but it didn't actually autocast. That I'm not totally sure of the reasoning for. So you would think it was going to do its effect, and then it wouldn't do its effect, but it wouldn't stop casting either. As though it could never reach where it was going. Maybe the, So it doesn't have, like, casting time, you know? I mean, it's not as if he was standing there casting. I'm not really sure what he was doing, but it wasn't doing what you would think that it was. wonder if something about the cast range being 0. There might be some kind of bug in Warsmash that it doesn't understand. Like, I wonder in populate data, what happens if I just set cast range to, like, the cast range plus, oh, I guess I can't access gameplay constants. Well, okay, let's say I set the cast range to 200 on Kaboom. Like, is that going to let them activate it? Is that why he would just stand there without activating it? Did it think that the unit was never in range? Oh, I can't imagine that's how that works. There's something else going on. Tried to use the ability and it never activated. It's just like some kind of bug in the system or something.
I'm all geared up. Let's roll out.
Let's see. Did this work now? So that works now. So I can do that. So that's different. So actually now it is fixed. So maybe it was the 0 range. Because now he's exploding, but he's not dying. So he's not... It didn't destroy itself like it's supposed to. Yeah, so then I guess the other thing I noticed was the explodes on death setting was not applied, and I'm thinking this stuff in do effect should probably become a method called explode, and then I should make it that on death. I think I can just do that. Yeah. If explode on death, then explode the function that we wrote. Cool, so that kind of solves that one. But the explode function, I guess, needs to also say if caster is not dead, then caster kill units. So that's going to fix that oddity. But I also find it weird that they never finished casting until I set their cast range to 200. Which, yeah, I don't know. So, I'm just going to put like 128 or something in there for now, and that's not good. I think Warsmash should be fixed so that that isn't necessary. But it looks like cast range is getting used in the point targeted spell in some way that I imagine is not how it should be. Just interesting that it does that, but is target within range? Tries to say, can I reach the target with the cast range that I have? And somehow the unit movement logic didn't like where that was going, but it should probably be fixed now. So I would think now should be pretty good, hopefully. Oh, I never fixed the autocast too, but that's something else. I would do that later.
Yeah, baby.
So I mean, normally you can't right-click an ability and have it make sounds. So it was sort of functional autocast, but it wasn't fully functional autocast. Oh, that does a lot of damage.
I'm all geared up.
Okay. That does a lot of damage. It claims it does 80.
I'm all geared up.
Is that true? This guy has 240 health. I'm gonna do you 80 damage. I think that did him double damage. So I bet what's happening is it's doing double. And I bet it's doing double because when he explodes, he probably is triggering the on-death effect. So that's kind of interesting. I guess that points out that I should do it differently. I should do it differently so there's no chance of repeating. I kind of thought that's what, like, the if not dead thing would do here. But, it's not working how I wanted. So maybe do effect should just say something else. That's interesting. So it's guaranteed to call this function twice, but really it's more like we just want to have, when he uses the ability, all it does is make him die, and then there's only the possibility of this explode function getting called once in death. But then there's the whole explodes on death boolean. So I guess the other thing I want to have is like boolean exploding. Sorry, I spelled that wrong. Exploding, which starts off as false, and then when it's doing this, we're going to set exploding to true. And if explodes on death, we're going to set exploding to true. And so we might set this flag twice, but we are only going to, like, if exploding explode one time. That's going to fix our damage value so that it's what we want. Now, I guess if I was really smart, I would have also tried to fix the autocast. I'm not quite sure how to fix that, though. Honestly, it might even be working, and it might just be that I graphically can't see it. It would be a little bit interesting if I run them up here, try to see.
I can handle that.
If I step on this thing, throw down a pocket factory, get myself a clockwork goblin, turn on the autocast, then right click. Now his right click is still an attack. I don't think I turned on the autocast. Alright, let's make
All
that.
systems go. The engine's running.
If I go explode in his face, he was at 120. So I think that's about right. Now he's at 80 because 2 exploded.
The engine's running. I can handle that.
He's gonna run over there. Exactly 160.
The engine's running.
Exactly.
I'm all
Not
geared
exactly,
up.
but 80.
I'm all geared up.
Yeah, no, it's doing 80 every time.
The engine's running.
Works great. So then I guess,
all
can I
geared
double
up.
check? And I think we saw this happen before. They killed my little guys. Yeah, when they die, they already explode.
The engine's running.
Cool.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, I mean, I think that works pretty well. We probably
you
should
got?
fix the autocast, but other than that, it's working great. Then you gotta wonder, is it easy to fix the autocast? Does that whole system even work? It was interesting to see when I went up to the tree that it has this thing. If it is there, it sets it on. Otherwise, it sets it off. Autocast on, order ID. And is there some way that the set autocast on as an unimplemented callback? What is autocast on do? Always returns false. Well, that would be the problem. Okay, so I guess I have to make my own boolean. Autocast on, and then we need to make set autocast on actually write to this thing, and is autocast on write to and so that way the other mechanisms that think that they write to that might make it automatically turn on. It might make it that I could do the right click smart, although I don't know if the right click smart is going to work, but definitely the ability will highlight now, which is a step forward.
Let's roll out.
Let's see. So I would anticipate now.
I'm on top
I
of
throw
it.
one of these things down. I get the Clockwork Goblin. I guess I should make it not instantly spawn. Yeah, now we have like a working autocast. That's cool. I need another one. Yeah, right click him, and he just runs over and explodes because the thing is autocast. But if it's not autocast, he'll attack. So that one's attacking, this one autocast, run, explode. Yeah, okay. Seems to work to me. Nice. Alright, well, I would call that a success. And I think we did it. We made Pocket Factory. How about that?